Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Rosh Hashana Daf begins with a lengthy Mishnah bringing an incident which occurred to illustrate the halacha that even if the Beis Din make a mistake, the day that they say is Rosh Chodesh remains Rosh Chodesh, and it is halachically valid Rosh Chodesh, and the Yom Tov is based on their ruling. The rest of the Perek, which is about half the Daf, will continue on that theme, bringing proofs and psukim to discuss that concept. And then the Daf will begin the next Perek with the Mishnah, which introduces what happens when the Beis Din themselves see or know about the new moon. Do they require testimony? Can they serve as both an aid and a judge? And the halachos of the actual trial for the moon. So let's begin. We begin with the Mishnah in the last line on the previous daf, and the Mishnah says it was an incident that happened where two people came and they testified that they saw the moon in the morning and they saw the moon at night. So most Rishonim understand that means that they saw the old moon, the ending moon, in the morning, and they saw the new beginning moon at night, meaning that the moed was sometime between the morning and the evening. Now we know that the old moon is only visible in the morning because the moon is running slightly ahead of the sun at the end of the month, and therefore it can only be seen in the morning just before the sun rises. That is when the sky is dark enough for it to be seen, even though it's really small. During the last day of the month, the sun overtakes the moon, and that is when the moled happens, when the sun actually crosses ahead of the moon in its path around the earth. Then, in the evening, the moon is slightly behind the sun, and therefore the moon can be seen. The moon in the beginning of the month, the new moon will only be seen in the evening after the sun has set and the moon is still up in the sky, just remaining the last bit before it sets behind the sun. Now, the Gemara has said earlier that there has to be 24 hours in which the moon is not visible. The time around the actual molad has to be a 24-hour period, 6 hours before and 18 hours after, or 18 hours before and 16 hours after, depending where you are geographically, during which the moon is not visible. Here you have witnesses that said they saw it, the old moon and the new moon, in the same day, which is within about 12 hours of each other. They could not possibly have done so. So the Mishnah says they came to Rav Yochanan ben Nuri and he said that they're false eidim, and therefore we should not accept their testimony. We should not declare the new month based on what they said. But the Gemara says then they went to Yavneh, where Rabban Gamliel was running the Beis Din, the Sanhedrin. He accepted them and he declared the month based on their testimony. The Gemara will state why he did that. So then the Gemara brings another incident. The Gemara says that there was a pair of Eidim that came and they testified that they saw the moon during the day on the 30th, and they wanted to say that this was Rosh Chodesh, it was day 1. But then that evening the moon was not visible. So the Gemara says, so the Mishnah says that most people said, okay, they're obviously lying. But Rabban Gamliel accepted their testimony anyway, even though the moon was not visible after they said they had seen it during the day. Gemara says that Rabbi Daisa ben Hyrcanus says these are false Eidim. How could you have somebody testify that a woman has given birth, and when you see her walking around, obviously in a highly expectant, pregnant state afterwards? If they saw the moon already, why is it not visible after they said they saw it? So Gemara says that Rabbi Yeshua agreed with Rabbi Daisa ben Hyrcanus, did not want to accept these Eidim. And Rabbi Gamliel sent him a message and he said, I decree that you come to me on the day that comes out to be Yom Kippur according to how you understand it, according to your ruling, which you don't want to accept my psak. On the day that comes out to be Yom Kippur according to you, you are to come to me in Yavneh with your money, with your wallet and your walking stick. I mean, you're to be Machal Yom Kippur and show that you don't hold it Yom Kippur and you accept my ruling that Yom Kippur is the day earlier. So the Gemara says that he was very upset about this, and he went and found Rabbi Akiva, and he was in pain, he was upset, and Rabbi Akiva said, I would like to tell you something which I learned which might console you. The Torah says, These are the Yom Tov of Hashem, which you shall declare them. Whether you declare them in the right time or the wrong time, even if Bezdin makes a mistake, they still are the Yom Tov of Hashem, and that is when they actually are. So Yom Kippur is when Rabbi Gamliel's Bezdin says it is, even if you're right, and even if you made a mistake, the day that he's telling you to come with your wallet is actually not Yom Kippur. So Rabbi Shua then went to Rabbi Dosim and Horkinus, and he said to him, look, if we're going to start questioning the rulings of the Bezdin, then we'll end up questioning the rulings of every Bezdin from Rabbi Gamliel all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu, because we're supposed to consider them all the same. Like the Torah says, Vayal Moshe v'Aaron Nadav v'Aviyu v'Shiv mizikni Yisrael. Moshe, Aaron, Nadav v'Aviyu, and the 70 elders went up the mountain. Why does it not say the names of the 70 elders, just calls them the 70 elders? That is the Bezdin of Moshe Rabbeinu. That was the Sanhedrin of Moshe Rabbeinu, and it's coming to teach us that you don't need to say their names. You shouldn't say their names, so that you cannot compare people in a different Bezdin and say, well, they're not as great as that Bezdin, so I don't have to listen to them. You don't know who those Sanhedrin were, and therefore you have to accept every Bezdin in its generation as being on the same level. So Rabbi Shua accepted this. He took his walking stick and his money, and he went to Yavne to Rabbi Gamliel on the day that Yom Kippur fell out to be according to his calculation. And Rabbi Gamliel came and he kissed him on his head, and he said, come in peace, my Rebbe and my Talmud, my teacher, my student. You are my Rebbe because you're wiser than me, and you're a student because you accepted my words because of my position, apparently. Okay, that's the end of the Mishnah. The Gemara now begins, and the Gemara says, what did Rabbi Gamliel say? That he accepted the testimony of those who said that they saw the old moon in the morning and the new moon in the evening. So it says, the Rabbi Gamliel said, I have a Kabbalah from my father's house, and sometimes it goes long, and sometimes it goes short, which seems to indicate that sometimes the moon takes a faster trip across the sky, and it can get there faster. That's how Rashi understands it. Other Rishonim said it to mean that sometimes, even though it's not visible for 24 hours, that period can be shortened. The moon varies, and therefore it can be less than 24 hours. It is not necessarily proof that they're incorrect, based on the fact that it was seen 12 hours apart, the old moon and the new moon. Now, other Rishonim understand that the reason he accepted their testimony was because he just ignored the first thing they said because it wasn't relevant. They said they saw the old moon. Nobody cares about seeing the old moon. We didn't ask him to testify to that. So that's nonsense. And we only accept the second thing they said. They said they saw the new moon, so we accept that that's what they said. Okay, says Rav Yochanan, what is the reasoning? How do we know that the moon can make a quick trip across the sky and it's not always the same? He quotes a pasuk in Tehillim, Asi yarch l'ma'adam, shemesh yadam avoh. The sun, the shemesh, is yadam avoh. We know its way. We know the trip that it takes. It follows the same pattern all the time. But the moon can vary. The moon, we are not yodea mavo. We don't know its path always, and it can fool us sometimes and make a quicker trip while we're not looking because it's blocked by the sun. Okay, says the Gemara, Rab Chia once saw the moon in the middle of the day on the 29th day of the month. He saw the old moon, and he took a clump of earth and he threw it at the moon, and he said, we're going to have to be Mekadesh the month on you tonight. Tonight's going to be the evening of the 30th, and we're going to want to say we see the new moon. And we want to be able to do that because we have to separate Yom Kippur from Shabbos. And now, you're standing over here. What are you doing here? Get out of here. Go hide yourself so that we'll be able to be Mekadesh the new moon. Because as long as we listen to the old moon, we're not going to be able to be Mekadesh the new moon. So Reb Chia said, go to the place called Ein Tav and be Mekadesh the new month over there. And send me a sign. Send me the following phrase, David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayim. The moon, the growing moon, represents David Melech Yisrael. Send me a message, Chai V'Kayim, it's alive and well, to tell me that the new moon has been seen and that you're Mekadesh the Chodesh. Says the Gemara will bring a brisa. It has another incident. It was one time when it was a very cloudy day, and they saw something that looked like the moon on the 29th of the month. It looked like the new moon. So the Gemara wanted to say, it's Rosh Chodesh. There's the new moon. It could be Mekadesh Chodesh already. Said Rabbi Gamliel, can't be. It's impossible because it's too early. And I have a Kabbalah that the cycle of the moon, meaning the new mode, can never be less than 29 and a half days, 2/3 of an hour, and another 72. Chalak and Mechelek is a 10,000th of an hour. It's got to be at least that length of time. You're seeing it too early, that cannot possibly be the moon. It looks like the moon, but it must be something else. In order to prevent people from thinking that that was actually Rosh Chodesh, so because it was the day that the mother of Ben Zuzah passed away, so Rabbi Gamliel made a very tremendous hesped in honor of the mother of Ben Zuzah. So the says not because she was such a great woman that she deserved that hesped, but in order that everybody should know that he was doing Hespedim, and therefore was obviously not Rosh Chodesh. Okay, now the Gemara refers back to the Mishnah where we had seen that Rabbi Shua went to Rabbi Akiva and found him in pain. So the Gemara says, who found who in pain? The way the Gemara describes it, it seems like Rabbi Shua found Rabbi Akiva in pain. But no, it's not. It's not what it was. It actually, as it would make more sense, it was that Rabbi Akiva saw that Rabbi Shua was in pain, and he said, "What is bothering you?" He said, "I would rather be sick for 12 months and have this gzera that I have to go be Machal Yom Kippur on the day that it falls according to my calculations." So he said, "Let me tell you something that I learned." He said, "Please, go ahead." He said, the Torah, when describing Yom Tov, it says, Eilu Me'ad Hashem Asher Tikru Osam. Osam is spelled Atem, and the word Osam is in that series of Psukim appears 3 times. It says Atem 3 times. It says the word Osam spelled Atem 3 times. They say that the sanctification of the new month depends on you, 3 times to teach me 3 halachas. Depends on what you say, even if you said it wrong by accident. Depends on what you say, even if you say it wrong on purpose, because of some calculation you have. And it depends on you, even if you say it wrong because you were fooled by false Eidim, and you accepted Eidus which was wrong. So therefore, the Yom Tov actually is when the Bezdin says, even if it's wrong for any of these 3 types of reasons. Okay, the Gemara then refers to the fact that he came to Rabbi Daisa ben Horkanus, and he told him the Brisa about the Zekanim, that their names aren't revealed. So the Gemara quotes the Brisa at length. He said, why are the names of the 70 Zekanim not revealed? So that a person should not say that this Bezdin that I'm supposed to be listening to is not as great, not like Moshe, not like Aaron, not like Nadav, not like Avihu, not like Eldad and Medad, which are 2 members of the Sanhedrin that we are familiar with, of the 70 Zekanim that we are familiar with. Not as great as any of them. So therefore, the other 68 are not revealed, so that we could say, well, maybe it's not as great as any of these, but it could be as great as one of the 68 whose names you don't know. So the Gemara then continues the Brisa, and he quoted another source to express the same idea that you're supposed to be makabel from the beznets in your days, whatever they are, even if they're not on the level of previous ones. The Gemara quotes 2 sets of psukim, which quote 6 Talmidei Chachamim. It's psukim in Shmuel. It says, V'yom Shmuel Hashem asher asa es Moshe v'es Aaron. Then it says, V'yishlach Hashem es Yerubal v'es Bedan v'es Yiftach v'es Shmuel. So you have here the names of Moshe, Aaron, Yerubal, Bedan, Yiftach, and Shmuel. Who's Yerubal? That's Gidon. Who's Bedan? Bedan is Shimshon, who came from the Shevet of Dan, and Yiftach is Yiftach. So we have these 6 Talmidei Chachamim listed together to show that we have 3 of the most powerful, the strongest Talmidei Chachamim, and 3 of the weakest leaders Klal Yisrael ever had. That's Moshe, Aaron, and Shmuel would be the strongest, and the 3 weakest would be Gidon, Yiftach, and Shimshon. They all had other things going on besides for their leadership of Klal Yisrael, but yet they're all listed together to teach us that each one in his generation is as trusted a leader as the other ones. Yerubal is in his generation has as much authority as Moshe in his, Aaron in his as Yiftach in his, and Shmuel in his, Shmuel in his as Yiftach in his, and Bidan, which is Shimshon in his, as Aaron in his. So this is to teach me, the Brisa says that even the lightest of the light, when they become the leader, or if they are lawfully appointed leader, then they become the strong of the strong. Another source for that, it says, you should go to the Kohanim, the Leviim, or the judges that will be in your days. Where it says, of course, the one in your days. You can't go to the ones that are not in your days and are in other days. This is to teach that the ones in your days serve you as well and as accurately as the ones in other days, even though they may not be on that level. You should not say, I wish I had the ones from other times. Okay, the parak ends off by referring to the end of the Mishnah where Rabbi Shua actually came to Rabban Gamliel. The Gemara quotes a Brisa here that when he saw him coming, when Rabban Gamliel saw Rabbi Shua coming, he stood up from his chair and he kissed him on his head and he said, Shalom Alecha Rebbe v'Talmidai. Peace be upon you, my Rebbe and my Talmud. Rebbe, that you taught me Torah barabim in public. The Rashi says doesn't know where. And Talmidim, you're my Talmud that I made a decree upon you and you accepted that decree as a Talmud. And he continued and he says, praiseworthy is the generation that the great people listen to the young people, the small people, the Gedolim listen to the Ketanim. Kal v'chomer, Ketanim listen to Gedolim. The smaller people listen to the greater people. So the Gemara says, what do you mean Kal V'chomer? The Ketanim have to listen to the greater people. You don't learn that from Kal V'chomer. The Gemara says, no. If in the generation where the great people pay attention and listen to the smaller people, certainly the smaller people will learn from that and pay attention to the words of the greater people. That ends the parak, and now we begin the next parak with the mission discussing what happens when the Beis Din themselves sees the moon. And we have a couple of cases here. So the first case is where the Beis Din and all of Klal Yisrael saw the moon. Witnesses were interrogated, but they didn't get a chance to actually declare Mekudesh until night ended. Until night began. The day ended and night began. And now it's been the end of day 30, and now we're in the nighttime. So the halach is you're not allowed to hold a court case at night. So they could not declare the new moon and the new month yet, and they would not get a chance to do it until the morning, which is day 31, and therefore it ended up being a 30-day month, and only day 31 was considered to be Rosh Chodesh, even though the moon had actually appeared on day 30 and it should have been day 1. But that came out to be the halacha. Now, what happens if the entire Sanhedrin themselves see the moon? So the Gemara says 2 of them should take the role of witnesses. They should stand up and they should say testimony, and then the rest of the Sanhedrin could say Mekudesh, Mekudesh. But it seems to be that somebody has to say testimony. You can't just say, well, we saw it myself, all the Sanhedrin saw it ourselves, so we're going to declare it without any testimony. There's got to be testimony as part of the process. The Gemara will show that that's not necessarily true. It's only one specific case in which it comes out that way. Now, if a Beis Din of 3 people saw it, so 2 of them should take the role of the witnesses, and then you have to get 2 more people to fill out the Beis Din. You have to get 2 more to sit on the Beis Din with one of the 3, and 2 of the ones who saw it should get up and say testimony, because you need 2 witnesses and 3 people to serve on the court itself. Then they could say Mekudesh, Mekudesh, because the one person cannot testify and be a judge, and you got to have at least 3 people being the judges. Okay, so the Gemara now begins, and the Gemara analyzes the cases one by one. So the Gemara says, first of all, you said that in the first case, the entire Beis Din saw it, and all of Klal Yisrael saw it. Well, who cares if Klal Yisrael saw it? If Beis Din saw it, that should be enough of a reason for them to say Mekudesh. And if they didn't manage until night fell, so then we learn the halacha from there. Why do you have to mention that Klal Yisrael saw it? Who cares about that? The Gemara says you may think that we should allow that day to be Rosh Chodesh because everybody saw it, and it's going to look bad for Beis Din. It'll weaken the trust in the Beis Din if they aren't Mekadosh Chodesh that day. But no, we say that the halacha is anyway, we wait until the next day because we didn't get a chance to be Mekadosh it before nightfall. Okay, next we had said that we had interrogated the Eidim. So Gemara says, why are they interrogating Eidim if the Beis Din saw it themselves? So Gemara says, no, it's 2 different cases. Case 1 is that everybody saw it. Case 2 is that Eidim came. No, it was not seen by Sanhedrin or all Yisrael. You had 2 Eidim that came, and the Beis Din was interrogating them, and they passed the test, but Beis Din did not get a chance to say Mekudesh until the day was over. And then the same halacha applies. They have to wait until the next day, and it ends up being a 30-day month. So Gemara says, well, what's the chiddush of that? Well, we already saw in the case where the Sanhedrin themselves saw, and they didn't get a chance, so then same thing should apply if witnesses saw. Why should it be different? Gemara says, you may think it's different because they started interrogating the witnesses during the day, which means that they convened the court to decide on the matter during the day. You may think that once the court has convened during the day, they're allowed to continue the mishpat. They're allowed to continue the session into the night, which is true in other forms of courts, like a court that's judging a monetary rule. You're allowed to do that. But here, you're not allowed to do it. Even though you started during the day, you started hearing testimony during the day. If you did not get a chance to say Mekudesh during the day, it's over. You missed it. You got to wait for the next day. Mar says, how do you know that? Mar says, because the pasuk from which we learned the halachas of Kiddush HaChodesh is ki chok li Yisraelu mishpat lekei Yaakov. So we call it a chok and we call it a mishpat. Mishpat is the beginning of the judgment. The beginning of the court case. Chok is the end of it. The chok has to be like the mishpat. Just like mishpat, you can't start a case at night. You have to start a case during the day. Whereas a limit for that elsewhere. So too, in this type of testimony, you have to end it during the day. You cannot end it at night, even if you started earlier. Okay. Next, we're going to discuss what happens when the Beis Din themselves saw it. So the Gemara says, why do you have to have 2 of them get up and say testimony? They saw it. Now, it makes no sense to say that hearing testimony is more believable than seeing it yourself. Seeing is better than hearing, or hearing about. So Gemara says you're right, but the case here is where they saw it at night. They couldn't say testimony, they couldn't declare the Chodesh at night. And in the morning they can't go off based on what they saw the night before. They have to have something presenting at the time at the court case. And therefore they have to have somebody stand up and say, we saw it last night. That you can do. Okay. Next, the Gemara discusses the case where you had a Beis Din of only 3 and they saw it. And we had said that 2 of them stand up and say this. So the Gemara said, what's a chiddush here? And don't tell me that it's the same thing that they said, the testimony that they saw it at night and they couldn't say, and therefore they had to say testimony in the morning, because we just saw that halacha from the previous case. So what's going on over here? So the Gemara says the chiddush over here is that you may think that you are allowed to judge this with one single expert. And you have 3 people, 2 of them could get up and be witnesses, because the witnesses have to be 2, and the third could be the judge by himself. In Dine Mamanis, in monetary laws, you are allowed to have a single judge. If he's an expert, judge a case by himself. You don't necessarily have to have 3. Here, though, you have to have 3. And how do you know that? Because the halachos of Kiddush HaChodesh are given over to Moshe and Aaron together. And the Pasuk of Shmuel says, V'yomar Hashem el Moshe v'Aaron b'Eretz Yisrael v'yomar Chodesh hazeh lachem. This testimony of Chodesh, of month, is lachem. It's to you. It's given over to you. And meaning the 2 of you together at least. And they each could not judge individually. So there were no greater experts than Moshe, yet he could not judge individually. So too, in the halachos of Kiddush HaChodesh, one judge cannot judge individually. He has to have a Beis Din with him. Now the Gemara wants to know that this entire halacha here comes out not like Rabbi Akiva. Because what do we see here? All 3 people in the Beis Din saw it. 2 of them will become witnesses and not serve on the Beis Din. We have a discussion as to whether that's allowable generally. Let's say a entire Beis Din sees a murder. Can they have 2 of them stand up and testify to the subject? Now, somebody definitely has to testify. They can't convict the guy based on what they saw themselves. That everybody agrees to. But can 2 of them testify? Can somebody who saw the crime and is fitting to be a witness, can he also serve as a judge since he saw it himself? So that's the question here. This court saw it, can they judge it? So when it says, the Rabbi Tarfon says yes, 2 of them will take the role of witnesses, and the other ones will take the role of a judge. And even though they saw it, they can act as a judge, no problem. Rabbi Akiva says no, you can't act as a judge. If you saw it, if you could be a witness, you can't be a judge. You have to get other people to judge the case. Now here in our case, though, you have the 3 people who saw the moon, and one of them is acting as the judge. So how is he allowed to do that? Must be it doesn't fit with Rabbi Akiva. So Gemara says no, not necessarily. It's very different. That's a case of a murder. There you're supposed to try to save the accused. There's a mitzvah to try to find schosim for the accused. If you saw the murder yourself, you're not going to do that. Therefore, you're disqualified from being a judge. However, the case of the moon is not like that. You don't have to save anybody. You don't have to try to acquit anybody. And therefore, you're allowed to let the person who saw it act as the judge.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.